Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. It is the 24th of February in 2025, and we're just a little bit more than a month past Inauguration Day, and a lot has happened. Um, Here are some of the top headlines for today. We are looking at President Trump. It looks like he said that he believes that Vladimir Putin would accept European peacekeepers, I guess that's what it's referring to, in Ukraine as part of a potential peace deal. There's a lot going on with that right now. He met with the French president today, and we'll see if this leads to, uh, you know, potential cessation of hostilities, because I think he admitted that it's going to take a ceasefire first in order to begin taking some of the next steps. I guess the big question that looms is, will Vladimir Putin actually allow for Ukraine to have any security assurances from allies, such as in Europe, in order to make sure that hostilities can't just immediately resume? It is totally clear that the war was initiated by Vladimir Putin. And however, we know that was largely due to the weakness that was displayed by the Biden administration back in 2021, especially with the Afghanistan withdrawal. And so the bottom line is, how will strength be demonstrated while at the same time trying to find a way to bring the fighting to an end? Hi, Lori. Hi, Pat. Good to see you guys. So he's not sure if they'll do a deal, but he's seeing some signs of potential ceasefire deal. And then the question is, how do you keep the fire ceased and maybe make it so that the war can't be restarted very easily? It's a big question. And I know they're talking about it. Macron seemed to be showing up with some reassurances that Europeans would actually step up and do more. He didn't say what that meant, but he said more. Now, this is an interesting thing, and I didn't expect this, but it said the U.S. has voted against a resolution demanding Russia immediately withdraw its forces from Ukraine. It was it's the third anniversary of the start of the war, which is, I think, part of the reason for this. Interestingly, Hungary and Israel both voted against it. It was the Europeans are the ones who put it forward, and 93 member states out of 140 voted for it. Now, maybe it's ill-timed when you're trying to get some ceasefire negotiations to happen, but out of principle, after this many years, it's an interesting choice by the administration, and I'm sure we will hear that turn into a political talking point by the Democrats pretty soon. And there's been some back and forth between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky, and I don't know. No, I did not see that Elon was assaulted. Am I surprised? Well, actually, no. But I hadn't seen or heard that had happened yet. Got to believe he's got some serious security around him, but who knows? Could just be walking through Congress, because some of those folks are literally foaming at the mouth at this point. In other news, and momentous news, actually, surprising in a sense, is that the Democrats have claimed that DOGE is unpopular and unconstitutional, all these things. But there's a Harvard poll that has confirmed that 70% believe the government is rife with waste and fraud, and 69% ultimately support cutting spending by $1 trillion. Now, President Trump's approval in that same poll is at 50%, 43% disapproval. It largely aligns with what they call the Real Clear Politics polling average, which is almost the same, within tenths of a percent in terms of approval. 83% of voters expressed a preference for cutting spending instead of raising taxes. 77% supported a broad review of government spending, which is what they're getting. 60% believe that DOGE is currently helping the government make major cuts. Now the Democrats have been testing the talking points, and of course they're claiming that there's a bunch of sensitive personal information that is being accessed and abused, which is nonsensical, because there's certain aspects of what's being done in order to get to the bottom of this waste, fraud, and abuse that we have only scratched the surface of. But if there are fake employees, there are fake Social Security recipients, if there's a bunch of these folks in there, there's really only a handful of ways you can figure that out. And just sitting there and trusting the oversight process that's been in place would be foolish, when the government itself has reported tens of billions of dollars annually of fraudulent payments across all these different departments. So, by the way, if you go to doge.gov, you can go and see, and I'm going there, you can go and see the latest work of the Department of Government Efficiency. And there's actually a DOGE tally of how much savings there's been. And as of last week, it was $55 billion. I think I heard that there was an update to that, but I haven't seen it yet. I believe the debt clock has a DOGE counter that is showing how much they've managed to cut. Now, there's a battle going on right now, both at the federal and at the state level, over whether DOGE is going to actually be able to do the things that President Trump has charged Elon Musk and the DOGE group to do. And here in Oregon, the Attorney General, Dan Rayfield, is taking steps to block Elon Musk and DOGE from accessing Oregonians' data, which is not clear what that exactly means. He's spending a lot of time filing lawsuits against the administration. What I haven't really heard anything about from Dan Rayfield is what he's doing to root out and prosecute waste, fraud, and abuse in Oregon. He should be joined at the hip with the Secretary of State, who is supposed to conduct audits and get to the bottom of this. And there's no talk of that. Apparently, there isn't any waste, fraud, and abuse in Oregon, and he doesn't really have time for that in his busy schedule. But he's joined with 18 other states to try to block DOGE access to the Treasury Department's central payment system, which, by the way, was found to have had $4.7 trillion in payments issued over recent years, that for which they had no information about under what part of the budget that was supposed to apply. And that was something we reported on last week. It's a field in the payment computer system that was optional and had nothing in it for $4.7 trillion of payments, making them very hard to track down exactly what they were for and see if those accounts can be synchronized and matched up against what is happening in the budget. So there's a lot of work to do on this. And um, we don't really have an Oregon government that is interested in or concerned about any of these. And we don't have federal elected officials that are concerned about this. They are only interested in what they can do with the politics of this all, because they're desperate and they're reeling, and they've been gathering. They're having progressive town halls because there really aren't conservatives showing up at these things. They're not really getting a chance to ask questions, and they got a rambunctious crowd that's kind of shutting them down. But I will tell you this: it's becoming clear why the Democrats are so concerned about this, because it doesn't sound like a very good campaign strategy to campaign for bureaucrats, especially ones that may not be doing any work, or maybe doing very little work, or may not have jobs that are in which they have to perform any discernible tasks. And no one has been looking at this. So the Democrats are responsible for these folks being in the government and drawing paychecks. And they're going to go ahead and defend them and they're going to try to block people who want to get to the bottom of waste, fraud, and abuse. So they're against investigating and finding waste, fraud, and abuse. But they are for keeping bureaucrats who might not be doing anything, might not be doing a productive job or any job at all, and drawing a paycheck from the government. So what is this? Why is this? Well, a very good commentary was published in Front Page magazine, one of my favorites, actually. That is a publication that really kind of has always been ahead of the game, pointing out what Democrats are doing and why they're doing it. And this commentary said that the reason why they're terrified is because they're concerned that you might find out just how much government you can live without. And you're told constantly that they're getting money and solving problems, but when you got somebody going in there and figuring out what they're actually doing, and whether that money is being spent to solve any problems or if it's just being spent to fund government and grow it, the public may find out they don't really need it. And if you think about it, this is something that Elon Musk knows in particular, because when he bought Twitter, he went in there. It was a money-losing operation, and they said it was a bad purchase. He went in, he cut like 2/3 of the staff. And then after he cut 2/3 of the staff, he turned around and found ways for Twitter to start making some money, actually charging for enhanced access and statuses within Twitter. Changed it to X, of course, as we know. And it turns out that despite cutting 2/3 of the staff, the productivity, the success of the site went up. They had more subscribers. They made more money. Obviously, they didn't have to spend as much money on staff. And they spent less time going and trying to cancel and block and shadow ban people. And lo and behold, people found out that Twitter didn't really need all those employees that they had. And some of those people are angry and berserk, but he was right. I think he's just applying this to a much, much larger budget, and one that has received almost no scrutiny for a very long time and doesn't go out of business if they screw up. And that is the U.S. government at all levels. So now the news over the weekend is that there was a message sent to a whole bunch of different federal employees saying that they need to explain by today what it is they're doing. And if they don't respond an email to tell them what they did last week, as part of their job, what work did they do, that could be deemed a resignation. Now, I think that one is kind of cutting to the quick and pushing an answer that is needed. However, there are sections of the government where the people that have been nominated by President Trump and confirmed by the Senate, have told their agencies not to reply to that. One of them is the FBI and Kash Patel. Another is DHS, which is RFK Jr. And, I think they're actually trying to figure out how to respond, because the department itself is going to send a response on behalf of the employees, reassuring that they have their own internal systems for getting to the bottom of this. And again, it's a productive exercise because we're going to learn something, right? And so, does that mean Doge is perfect? No. Actually, it's entirely possible that some mistakes along the way have been made. Newsweek gleefully tried to report this after an interview that was done, or a speech that was made by Jim Jordan, who is obviously a supporter and an ally of Doge, President Trump, and Elon Musk. But Elon Musk said, look, we're going to make some mistakes. I know I am, and we're going to fix those mistakes. But the general intention is, and they think they can get to $1 trillion in savings in a government that's running almost a $2 trillion deficit right now, and will not be able to afford its debt if this were to keep up. But I think this is something that is going to continue to develop as a story, and we should watch it, because the Democrats are really trying to demonize the whole thing and claim that it's illegal, unconstitutional, catastrophic, destructive. And I don't know if everything they're doing is going to stand up to scrutiny and challenge. But that's really not important here, because some of the things are going to work. Some of the things might not work the way they set out to make it happen. But at the same time, they're going to get to the bottom of it, and they're going to solve some problems. And how many problems would be solved if they didn't do anything? And the answer is zero. And that's what you were getting from the Biden administration. And there's a really good cartoon that I want to share with you. Let me see if I can upload it here while we're talking. And it is really an insightful little cartoon that I think tells a story. It is when Democrats do stuff, it's okay. When Republicans do it, apparently it's fascism. And we've heard this story many times before, but let me go and see if I can find this one. Oh, here we go. I'll open it up here in just a second so that you can see it. Let me share the screen. It's not sharing. Here we go. Window. All right. Remember, Bill Clinton had his initiative to cut wasteful spending? So did Barack Obama. They all had special names for them. What did they do? Well, they said that they were going to do that. What did they accomplish? Not very much, as we know. Donald Trump says it. He actually means it. They're going to cut wasteful spending. And the Democrats are like, he's a fascist dictator. Kind of says it all, doesn't it? So that's why take it with a grain of salt when you hear from someone that it's the end of the world, and that sorry about that, folks. I'm back. just had a little snafu where I accidentally accidentally closed the window that was showing you all of this stuff. So hopefully you can see and hear me right now. Um, but I'm back. Uh, yeah, I'm here. Can you see me, Pat? I'm right here. I hope you guys can see me because I'm just going to continue. Um, Other news. A federal judge has rejected the Associated Press's bid to overturn the White House ban. The ban was applied to the Associated Press because they control what's called the style guide, and said that they refuse to refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, even though that's actually been changed in the official government register. And this is crazy. Um, it is. It it is what the government now is going to call uh, the Gulf of Mexico. It's now the Gulf of America. The AP has decided that they're not going to tell people that. Um, they're not going to follow official government policies and naming conventions, and so their influence is disproportionate. A lot of news outlets don't even generate their own news. This is the same people, by the way, that told everyone that they had to say uh, he, him, she, her, you know, and what to say and what not to say. That's always the woke version of what you could decide to do. Um, and I think they're taking the right action now. Right now, the courts have decided not to step in, so the Associated Press is going to have to figure it out. Now, maybe that's conservative outlets will be banned in the future. That's entirely possible, but I think we all know that's going to happen anyway, and has happened, in fact, which is why they're starting to include non-traditional media in all of this. There is one other waste, fraud, and abuse thing here that's sort of being uncovered is Jennifer Granholm, who's the former governor, I believe, of the state of Michigan. I think it's the governor or U.S. senator. Uh, she was the energy secretary under Joe Biden. And of course, she did a terrible job because energy got much, much more expensive. And they tried to implement a bunch of climate sensitive things that involved, in this case, awarding $600 million to a consortium of California utilities, including Southern California Edison. And she, of course, was plagued with ethics violations, including conflicts of interest, using her official position to promote companies that she had a financial stake or relationship with. But she was never charged or disciplined for anything, which is par for the course in the Biden administration, where they actually almost encourage that behavior. It turns out that even though the media liked to say she was a champion of clean energy policies, 4 months after her confirmation hearing, it was reported that she held shares in Proterra, an electric bus company that the Biden administration heavily promoted. And according to the AP, she told Congress that she mistakenly provided false information about her family's stock holdings. Oops, no consequence for that. And that she had then divested of those shares with a tidy $1.6 million profit as a result. So what happened with that money? Now, there are Granholm said they and their family members own stocks that could violate conflict of interest rules. And all of this kind of came forward even further over the course of the following 2 years, including Ford Motor Company and several others. Well, Proterra, by the way, went bankrupt in August of 2023 and left a bunch of transit districts across the country with broken buses that couldn't be repaired. Good job. She's the one who did the EV road trip, and it turned into a disaster because planning to fast charge her caravan of EVs, including a luxury Cadillac Lyriq and a hefty Ford F-150 and an affordable Bolt electric vehicle. Her advance team realized there weren't going to be enough plugs to go around. So they ended up having to go much slower. They went to one of the stations for chargers in one instance that were broken. Others were occupied. So an energy department staffer tried parking a non-electric vehicle by one of these working chargers to reserve a spot for the approaching Secretary of Energy. They blocked a family with a baby in need of a blocked spot. Objected to the family objected to the energy department's misuse of energy infrastructure in public vehicles. The parents called 911. The senator from Wyoming, John Barrasso, who was a ranking committee member at that time, called for the inspector general to investigate. Josh Hawley, senator from Missouri, called for her resignation. And House Republicans have an oversight committee that's also investigated her investments in Proterra. She's kind of got that Nancy Pelosi magic going, right? Well, now they announced that they were going to spend $1.5 billion with a company called Breakthrough Energy to help avoid a climate disaster and spur a new industrial revolution. But as we go through one after the other, these crony politics, the interesting thing is that I guess now she's in line to maybe benefit still further from some of these decisions, including it says here she will now sit on the board of some of these companies. So she's going to be a board member, which can be a lucrative, fairly easy job. And I think it's time for DOGE to dig deep on the energy department and for the Department of Justice to kick that into gear. And you know what? They might need the FBI to step up. And the FBI just named, Trump just named Dan Bongino as a deputy FBI director to serve under Kash Patel. As you know, Dan Bongino, conservative radio talk show host, former Secret Service agent, now he's going to become a deputy director, I guess, assuming that if he has Senate confirmation, I don't know. But President Trump announced that, and Dan Bongino will get down to it. He knows Secret Service doesn't just protect the president; they do investigations, particularly on currency fraud, and of course on the background of people that might issue threats and threaten the president, and also for major national security events like a Super Bowl. Hopefully that we can get the FBI involved with looking into things like Ms. Granholm's situation, which, if she didn't violate any laws, she certainly violated ethical rules and should be held accountable for that. Anyway, in other news, a federal judge has temporarily halted the Trump administration from doing immigration raids at some Maryland worship houses. The administration will not be able to make arrests where Quakers, Cooperative Baptists, and Sikhs worship, as those groups filed a lawsuit against the federal government. And I think you'll see a lot more of these challenges taking place, the so-called sanctuary laws that might exist in some states, especially when it relates to apparently what someone claims to be religious freedom. But what's the limit? Like, if a rapist or a murderer decides to take to hide there, is the government obligated to allow a rapist or a murderer who got into our country with this or has committed a crime since being in our country, are they allowed to just be unaccounted for, not deported, not arrested, not detained? And so watch this space, because this one's going to really matter going forward. Tina Kotek, by the way, in following in the footsteps of Jennifer Granholm, is calling climate change an existential threat to Oregon. She is claiming that climate change threatens the existence of the state of Oregon, and she's aligning her priorities with this. She says we have a clean fuels program. We're going to have clean electricity by 2040. That they have really good programs in place for energy efficiency, renewable energy. I wonder if they have any electric buses from that company, Proterra. And she says they're going to go straight ahead on those things. She'd like to see more money to come for electric chargers and other things, but absent that, we're going to push forward. Every state, including Oregon, she said, has to stay the course on climate action. It is an existential threat to our state, to our country, and to the world. And she's saying, even if we don't have all the dollars from the federal government, we're going to do it anyway. Same with reproductive rights and gender affirming care. Apparently those are super important to her as well. Calling them medically necessary. And, you know, again, if they want to use state of Oregon funds for that, then I guess they can continue to tax people to do that. But yeah, I do agree. I think the existential threat could be Tina Kotek and her policies. And, you know, they're claiming that every wildfire becomes bad and burns up everything that it does because of climate change. That's their explanation. So they're just saying that that's all part of it. But they have put together a program that makes it almost impossible to build and afford a home in a state where they want to have 35,000 of them built a year. So she likes to talk a big game on fentanyl, homelessness, and housing. But actually, it's entirely possible that she's one of the main causes for this. And again, thus the existential threat. If you think those problems are important and need to be solved, she's contributing more to making them worse through inaction and through backing policies that run a counter to things like building or housing. And now Lars Larson has spotted that there is a $250,000 a year public servant that only works part-time. This is Dr. Sejal Hafi. She pulls down $250,000 a year as the director of the Oregon Health Authority. You think that job would get her full attention? But she oversees 5,000 employees and a $17 billion budget here in Oregon. That's all funds, so that's federal funds flowing through that. But apparently, she has time on her hands to take a part-time gig 700 miles away at Stanford. She'll see patients once a week, so she's still seeing patients. And yeah, she hasn't really explained to the under Oregon ethics laws how she's taking outside paychecks for this stuff, but she's got these other gigs going, and she's supposed to be the director of the Oregon Health Authority. And if you all remember, the Oregon Health Authority struggled, to put it mildly, during COVID, and largely failed to do what they needed to do. So, you know, I guess this is, again, we got to chalk this up to Tina Kotek, who thinks this is fine. And if you look at the situation about how she paid for her wife's travel and protection and parties, maybe she sees nothing wrong with it. But I think it's here in Oregon, we desperately need our own Doge, and we need a government that's actually prepared to make this a priority. So it starts possibly at the federal level, but the black box that is the state of Oregon needs to start accounting for this. And so here's one good example here is there's a hotline, which the state calls a HOPE line, that was created following the passage of Measure 110. And it was supposed to be a line you call to avoid having to pay a $100 fine if you were ticketed for being involved with substance abuse. And as we know, that was the effect of decriminalization. It was recriminalized, but now they've gone back and looked that in a 2024 story noted that during the first 6 months of 2024, only 73 people used the hotline. It's run by a Boston nonprofit called Health Resources in Action. The cost of the line worked out to $10,700 per call. $10,700. You could almost get more than 73 calls from spammers, from crank calls, and wrong numbers in the same period. That's pretty bad. And now we know that Measure 110 has been quasi recriminalized, the hard drugs, but they've also decided to extend the contract and keep this line going. There needs to be some accountability for what this is doing. Guess who is also in part overseeing this effort? That's right, Oregon Health Authority Director Sajal Hashi, the part-time head of the OHA. You can't make this stuff up. And now Senator Kate Lieber, a Democrat, I believe she was the majority leader of the Senate, state Senate, has said in this article that legislators will not be allocating future funding for this hotline to nowhere. But why did somebody actually have to have all this reported before they called it out and said they were going to stop doing it? You know, it's a great question, isn't it? And lastly, and this is an important report, this is an article also by Noel Crombie with the Oregonian. Oregon's latest plan to reduce public defense crisis makes it worse, according to an analysis that was published. Oregon has an unchecked backlog of criminal defendants without court-appointed lawyers, but the blunt assessment that was made here is that sounds the alarm on the long-term plan approved by the Oregon Public Defense Commission. That's something that was created as part of the legal changes made to address this in the last legislative session. And there was a review done by Aaron Knott, an attorney and longtime policy expert who serves as the state court system's director of government relations and communication. And the conclusion was that the Public Defense Commission's plan will significantly increase the magnitude and duration of the unrepresented crisis. They've infused $90 million in 2023 into this. And the article goes on to explain how that the number of lawyers has dropped by half that are available to criminal defendants since mid-2023. The tally of out-of-custody criminal defendants without lawyers has grown by more than 2,000 in the same period. So everything is going in the wrong direction. District Attorney Kevin Barton and Nathan Vasquez, Washington County, and the new Multnomah County District Attorney are on top of this. And they said that they are floating a multi-step plan to provide temporary relief, something that really just hasn't been seriously considered by the so-called Oregon Public Defense Commission. And the Oregon District Attorneys Association has seized on this and called this out and said that this is something that really goes to the top. The governor's got to step up and start looking for things that really solve the problems. This 13-member commission was appointed by the governor. And that commission is the one that's in charge of solving this crisis, which they keep saying, describing the crisis, but I'm not sure they've described it correctly. Nathan Vasquez in particular has said that there's been a problem where lawyers just simply turn down and are not forced to provide defense to defendants, which the court and the judges actually have the power to do. So there's more to this article. I won't go into all of the details, but I suggest that we start watching all of this, because just think how many things we've just talked about today that are things that Tina Kotek acknowledged were bad and needed to be solved, and yet it's getting worse. What's the existential threat to Oregon? It's becoming more clear. A little teaser for tomorrow. I'm going to have on Chris Gray, who's the communications director for the Oregon Young Republicans, and is also a correspondent for the Oregon Catalyst, which is the Oregon Watchdog Taxpayers Association outlet. And he's going to come in and talk, because he was at the meeting where the Oregon Republican Party voted on and selected its new leadership. It's voted on by representatives of each county, it's kind of based on population to some extent. And we'll explain that more detail tomorrow. But a new chairman, Jerry Cummings, who's a pastor and a precinct committee person from Columbia County, he won the seat. There were like 3 rounds of voting, and we're going to talk about that and what we saw. There were other candidates. We're going to talk about the other candidates, and we're going to talk about what the meeting was like, and also the other people who were elected to the position of vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. It's an all-new leadership team, and so stay tuned. We'll have Chris on. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about young Republicans, and we'll talk about taxes and tax increases. And I think you're going to want to hear this one and share it with everyone you can. Please do that with today's show, by the way. Share it with everyone you can and tell them tomorrow night we're going to hear even more about what's happening, the leadership of the state party, the direction that we learned the state party wants to go, and also learn a little bit about the new chairman and some of the new officers who have obviously their work cut out for them, because Oregon didn't go the same way the rest of the country did this last year. We know it's a challenge, but we also know that we've got an opportunity ahead of us, especially if we seize upon the opportunities that are being unleashed at the federal level. And of course, we have a governor's race next year. So anyway, we should check the windows for leaks. It has been raining a heck of a lot. I hope all of you are safe wherever you are. And I look forward to the next episode being with you for the captive audience tomorrow night. Have a great night, everyone. Take care.